Welcome to this edition of the Redacted Culture Cast. I have as a guest Dustin Sanchez, who is going to introduce himself.
Hey guys, I'm Dustin Sanchez. Just, I guess, like most people that you may hear in here, I'm a huge gun, advocate, 2A advocate. I do stuff with JP Rifles. I started out my career in the industry building rifles for them, then moved into marketing. Kind of left there. I still contract for them. I'm marketing manager here at Real Avid, and we're in the industry. And then on the side of that, my best friend and I started a company called Action Gunner, and we go around and we shoot content, whether it's videos, pictures, that stuff. And then I'm just an avid competitive shooter. I try to shoot 10 to 12 major matches a year, and try to make some local ones. And then other than that, just kind of hang out. So that's me in a big shell right there.
Is that the dividing line between an amateur and an aggressive competitive shooter? Is once you get above 10 major matches a year, you've made it. You're a real boy.
No, I think that's the financial line right there. No, I think for me shooting majors is a way for me to get out there and spend time with friends that I've made over the years shooting matches, and also just to kind of see what's changing within the industry. A lot of people look at SHOT Show as the ultimate place to go. And for myself, it's if I want to see stuff that's coming down the pipeline and get a firsthand look at it and actually see it in the field, it's shooting competitively. So
Okay.
that's kind of where I'm at. Plus, it's just I'm a competitive guy. I want to push myself and make myself better. And the only way to do that is to go out there and compete against some of the best.
Yeah, indeed, man. Where is the best place to find you guys? Where do you want to be found at?
Oh, yeah. So
What's
on Instagram, you can find me on Instagram at 2A_Dustin. And then, of course, you can look up Action Gunner on Instagram, and that's where you'll see a lot of the content that comes out. That's primarily Sean's putting a lot of those videos out right now. So we shot videos for like the tactical games, JP, other major matches around, and then we just do some fun stuff. We want to get out there and educate people on just firearms training, be safe,
Gotcha. Well, if you're this far in the show, you know that the best way that you support the channel and the podcast and this culture building experience is to check out redactedllc.com. That's where you'll find our merch, and we have more things coming down the pipeline. So thank you so much for listening. Let's get into the fun of the day. So, Dustin, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show is because I've known you for a while now, and you have a foot in so many different components, as in you're not straddling the fence and being halfway committed to different components. You got your full-time competition piece and your, I would say, full-time videography component and full-time marketing, branding, development. And so when it comes to the gun culture as a whole, I think the term marketing can either follow the post madman approach where everyone like marketing is a dirty word, or you get into like the early 2000s where it's like this new magic. I remember meeting people who were in graduating college with marketing degrees, and they viewed their chosen profession as if it was some sort of wizardry, and it was kind of odd. And one thing we've mentioned in the past is that gun culture itself is certainly unique. You cannot take the same approach in content within the gun culture than you can in most, if not any other industries, with the exception, which we started on, was possibly cars. Yeah. So what is a link between gun culture and the automotive world? Because I've heard of people who are into machining parts for high-end cars, take that tolerance to the gun world. There's obviously crossovers, I just played Call of Duty. There's more than one car chase scene.
I think you look at it, it's just horsepower, loud noises, right? And I turn around and look at guns the same way, right? I mean, high-end guns in how they function and the tolerance stacking that they have, how accurate they are is almost the same as as what you're going to get if you build a freaking muscle car. They're all just kind of, for me, that's just the way I look at it. It's this culture of, I can talk to you about a firearm and then turn around and we can talk about a car that runs a 40 mile, or runs a quarter mile, and we understand how hard it is to get from point A to point B, whether you're building a firearm or you're building a car. That's how I look at it. And then there's just, I think, growing up, some people just have this, like, you grow up idolizing these guys that have awesome cars and awesome guns. So then naturally there's this alpha thing that wants to come out, and all of us guys are like, I want to have an awesome car and an awesome gun because that's what I grew up with. And before you know it, you spend all your money trying to achieve both of those things.
Yeah, I'm not as much of a car guy as I would like to be. And as we were talking about earlier, part of that is because it's just been timing and location. But I think there's one thing that overlaps between gun culture and cars is kind of a threefold effect. One of them, the good stuff is expensive, right? Night vision is expensive. A nice car is expensive. Two, they both require material and skill, and that both that material and skill when they come together in unison tends to look pretty cool. And then the third part is both the gun culture and the car culture have this component that I don't know what word to use, but just like you have Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, maybe even like higher end competitive shooters, so you have like NASCAR racers and Indy 500 and all this other kind of stuff. And so in the gun culture, you can have this sort of issue where there is something to own. Like if you own a car that can go 150 miles an hour, where are you going to drive that?
Yeah.
Right. And it's not, and it's, and both with, a nice suppressed rifle, a night vision setup, where are you going to go shoot that? And a car that's going to drive fast or very capable, where are you going to go drive that? From a pure practicality question, if you take let's just say the desired outcome of the flaccid American male, they may not understand it. It doesn't have that rote practice. It's not, 100 or having 400 horsepower is not useful for getting groceries,
right?
In most cases, right? And a suppressed 10.3 inch 223 rifle is not particularly useful for, let's just say, harvesting deer. Can you do it? Absolutely. Right. Is it the best? Okay, fine. But both of them beg the question that practicality itself in the generic sense, in the day-to-day, is not exactly the sole deciding factor.
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's where it all ties in, right? I mean, I was building, we were building lowriders on bags that would, lay the frame on the ground. There's really no practical reason for that, but it was fun doing 70 miles down the highway and dropping the frame on the ground and ripping your roll pan off. That was cool. Let's do it. All right.
Oh. Yeah. Okay. So there's something more to life than just pure practicality.
Yeah.
I mean, Utopia is creepy, where it's like life requires absolutely no effort.
Yeah, exactly.
I've started defining utopia as the absence of meaning, the abolition of meaning. There is nothing to strive. Yeah, it's there. There's a little bit of a call to the abolition of man by, how can I not? It's everyone knows him. He wrote the Narnia books, The Abolition of Man by...
Yeah, I don't know the guy's name, but I know who you're talking about.
It's on my shelf here somewhere, whatever. But that's a good one. Gosh, who? I hate myself for not knowing what this is. He also wrote, the Screw Tape Letters. He's a friend of...
This is where you do the voiceover?
He's the friend...
Like, you find out who it is at the end, and you just throw it in there.
Okay, cool, fine. I'll figure it out later. It'll come back to me in just like You know, the Screw Tape Letter. He wrote the Screw Tape Letters. He wrote the Narnia books. He wrote the okay, whatever. He was friends with Tolkien. He's just a famous name. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. Mere Christianity by, and then C.S. Lewis. Got it. It's right there. But needless to say, you know, so the abolition of meaning utopia is that, and so. So you started in the car world. How did you go from the car world to the firearms culture?
I mean, I grew up in Texas, so it was firearms were just a way of life. You know, you wake up, hunt in the morning, go to school, come home, go shoot cans, shoot water, shoot turtles, you know, in the pond or the tank, hunt, whatever. You know, it was just a way of life, and you know, so guns have just been in my life, forever, as long as I can remember. It was cars that actually kind of came in and was introduced to me over firearms, you know, and the way I look at it, because I was in high school when I started really getting into automotive and building cars and looking at, like, let's make a career out of building cars. Firearms really weren't like, I can go and become a professional hunter like that. That just wasn't one of those things. But you know, sitting there for me watching NASCAR and these guys doing these rally races in F1, that was a thing, right? And then there was Chip Foose, and if anybody listens to the show, they're in the cars, they know who Chip Foose was. And you know, then you also had Jesse James building his motorcycles. So for me, it was just like, oh, look at this culture, look at this lifestyle. I can be creative, and instead of painting a tree on a board or something like that, not that there's anything wrong with it, but I can go build a truck and make it mine and customize it and, you know, take it out and compete against other people. That it was more of, you know, that was something that was introduced to me. That was something I loved. Firearms is something I just grew up with, spent my entire life around it. So I don't even remember the first time how old I was when I shot my first firearm, you know. But I remember how old I was the first time I drag raced a car. So,
well, there you go. I've never drag raced before. So, how did your opinion and preference in firearms change over time?
I think it was kind of just with the growing of the culture of the industry, and like the internet came around, so you started being introduced to more stuff, right? Like, so I was running around with a bolt gun and a lever action, thought they were the coolest things, and then now you start seeing, you know, an AR-15, and what is that? How do I get one of those? Where can I play with that? Right? I thought, you know, at that time, like, only the military had it. So how can I get my hands on one? And I think it just was like, you know, growing up in the 90s, like I said, you know, shows started coming out. You got more, you got satellites starting to come out, so you can start seeing more different style guns, and then the internet. And as that grew, you start to find out, like, okay, there's an AR, and it didn't matter what AR it was. I just wanted an AR. But then you get an AR, and then you start reading about it more, and you're like, oh, well, wait a minute. Firearms and ARs can be treated just like cars. I could go buy a Toyota Camry and paint it and do whatever I want. It's still a Toyota Camry, but I could go, you know, spend a little bit more money and get like the Corvette, right? And then you get there and you're like, wait, I could go big. I could go bigger. I can go different calibers. I can go different handguards. And then it's like, all right, well, this is Legos for grown-ups that I can do in my house without a garage. That's awesome. You know, let's get into that. Let's see how they compete. Let's see how they perform. How accurate are they?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not, I think most people who've been in this culture know that there is a bit of a never-ending strive for more. Maybe not strive, but there's a never-ending hunger for more. And like and not to be too ethically critical at this point in time. It's easy, like, you know it when you're there, where you're like, you're starting to justify things that you shouldn't be having. Like, oh, well, what, you know, but what happens if there's an EMP? I need a, you know, it's like, okay, dude, like that, the likelihood of that is so negligent. And if it costs you grocery money for like the next 6 weeks,
yeah,
you know, it's just kind of chill out. But I don't want to get too critical on it too quickly. So the car world, the gun world overlap. We also see it overlap in media, which you also, you know, participate in. But the easiest example you referenced was Fast and the Furious. And like, yeah, it's a movie about cars, and guns show up in it. I think there's a little, a lot of interaction there. We're kind of on a bank heist kick right now, as far as watching movies. Like we just watched. Heat is always a classic one. Another one, Den of Thieves.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
Was another recent one. It's fairly decent. I think. But you have a bit more of like the culture of the guns having utility, but then also something more. Like it's not a purely utilitarian item. And I think an oversimplification of approaching firearms from a purely utilitarian perspective necessarily and always leads to some sort of, I'm going to use the word degeneracy, because like we're not purely utilitarian beings either. Right. And so you got to see, so wait a minute. Now you said the 90s. Did you have an AR-15 before the 1998 ban?
No, they were starting to show up in my area around that time. Okay. So we would go out hunting, and my friend, his dad was a doctor, so he had one, right? Grows up in Texas. They got a lot of money. They could afford one. And so that was the first time, we wanted to go to his house, because they lived on 2,000 acres. So yeah, we would go hunting, but we knew we got to shoot the AR. So that was my thing, right? Like in the late 90s, like when I'm old enough to buy an AR, I'm buying an AR, right?
What was an AR-15 like in the 90s? Because I didn't. I was too young to really give a shit.
Well, for me to look at it now, it's kind of biased, right? Because it's it's what I thought was cool then. It was only cool because of the time frame that it was at, right? But it was just it was a DPMS. There was really nothing special about it. But to me, it would always be like that dream rifle. Like I've had a chance to buy a couple of DPMSs and I haven't bought them. And one day it will be that rifle I need to add to my collection, because that was the first rifle I ever shot. So it was just, very basic, man. Like nothing special about it. And the fact that it was an AR-15, that was all that was cool about it,
So when Dustin Sanchez is retiring into old age and he has his mansion on the lake, and somebody comes and he goes, "Oh yes, look at my collection. I have my fine wines and my fine DPMSs."
No, it won't be a fine DPMS at all. That's going to be that one that I got stuffed in there. It'll be like, why do you have that when you have these? It'll be like first emotional attachment. 100%.
No, I think, and then, oh God, that's a horrible way to try to say it. I once was the 9mm or 45 is the only real gun kind of thing person. I was like that for a hot minute, and I was an adult, and I was professionally employed. And I was like, holy God, and thank goodness I grew out of it. But I remember my first handgun was a 45. And I was like, yeah, because 9mm isn't good enough. And it's like, what do you think I'm doing now? Everything is a 9mm. Like, geez, man. So I think that as much as we take ourselves seriously, we can look back and say, okay, I was stupid there.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And like, there's a certain aesthetic. I've been on this kick lately where I want to build let's see, the M4. Basically, I want to build a clone of the M4s that SF used in 2003.
Yeah.
Right. So you got you got your short little stocky thing with the big Comp M2 and the PEC 2 on it, and like this kind of blocky gig. Or maybe like I want to rebuild the rifle that I had while I was in Ranger Battalion, but that's actually not that original. It's just an EOTech ESPS 2 or something on it. Yeah. It's just Actually, I probably have all the parts that I could do almost all of it now, but
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I'm with you, man. I get it.
I want to, or I do kind of want to do a car 15, but I'm not that big into it. So
yeah,
but hey, it is what it is.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. For me right now, it's more about performance and accuracy out of my rifles and firearms, So the DPMS one, I know Randy Luth. I've hung out with him a couple of times and got to really know him. And he is founder of DPMS, and then DPMS was the first rifle I shot. So for me, it's just one of those, having the safe. I might, have a cool story to tell about it one day, but it wouldn't, So I get it. It's more of that emotional stuff.
I think there's room for it. I mean, as much as we can kind of laugh at it a little bit, there is a sincerity to this. I mean, you have the grandfather's hunting rifle story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I still have rifles that well, I don't have them here, but I have rifles that my grandfather passed down.
Yeah.
Right. And so like there is something, a pre-68 Winchester chambered in 243 that you can harvest a deer at 200 yards, no problem, day after day, week after week, whatever. So there's something valuable to it.
Sure.
But if you're going to make an evaluative statement between the performance of a rifle versus the performance of a rifle of one versus another, what are the things that what is it that makes a good AR good?
Tolerances. I mean, we look at tolerance stacking is for me, it's the big thing. When you can just random number, right? Let's say plus or minus 10,000. 10,000 is what people be like, all right, that's what our tolerances need to be in there for us to say it's acceptable. Well, if I've got one that's at -10 and one that's at +10, I mean, that's a huge difference. And, that's 20,000. And so you start looking at all that stuff. There's a big difference that goes in within just the upper and lower receiver and all the components that can be added to that. And then you add in accuracy of the barrel. That, to me, that's the big difference in a quality AR and a non-quality AR. And that's why you'll see somebody he'll spend $700 or maybe $500 on an AR, and that thing is solid. It just runs. And it's that one that all of a sudden, like that day, everything aligned and all of the perfect things came together where they were all within a, plus or minus 3 on the stacking, on tolerance stacking, right?
What is tolerance stacking?
Well, tolerance stacking is like when we're looking at like putting let's go with like a chassis gun, okay? Because it might be a little easier for people to understand that. So I've got a
chassis gun, like a bolt action.
Yeah, let's just go there, and then you can kind of correlate those. Let's say that I'm going to machine this thing, and it needs to be at 5,000ths is what we actually want it to be. And then, but I've got a tolerance. I'm going to allow it to come out at like, let's say 6,000ths or even 2,000ths, right? So though our goal is to hit this line right here, I'm okay if it's actually within this stack, like in this measurement in here.
Okay, so you're talking about the dimensions of a milled piece or a produced piece. And let's just say the objective is to have the width of it, whatever, your diameter, to be exactly 1 inch.
Yeah, exactly.
Or exactly 2 centimeters.
Yes.
So then your tolerance you're talking about is the acceptability for it to be 2.000001 or 1.999999.
Yeah.
Nine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So and because when you're dealing with any type of machining, it's never a perfect, absolute 100% time after time you get exactly the same because you're dealing with material and we're on the microscopic. It's not like copy paste.
Exactly.
And so, right, that makes sense. So I understand. So because this is where I want to make sure. This is one of the reasons I want to have you on is because like sometimes you think you know and then you realize you don't know. I don't want to Dunning-Kruger myself into stupid. And so. Tolerance stacking then are you talking about you take that whole system? Well, this has a variation of 1 to 2. This is a variation of 1 to 3. This is this part. So you get 3 parts. Yes. And now my overall tolerance is a -5 to +15. Yes. Is that what you're talking? Okay.
Exactly. Right. So that's the big difference. Like that's what you truly see in any firearm. From top to bottom, it's going to be that tolerance stacking, right? And that's when you'll hear like when a company will advertise, well, we hand polish this. And it's because what they're saying is, well, it might have been 2,000ths oversized. And then we came in and hand polished it to get it down to the exact measurement that we wanted. And then this piece
you
here,
see that
we hand polished to get it to the exact measurement so that everything comes together just right. So it's not too tight.
you
not
see
too
that in
light.
high end 2011s. Yeah, high end 2011s,
100%.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that goes from cars to
Yeah.
electronics to, you know, our firearms to tools, everything like that. And that's the big difference when you're looking at quality. You're looking at a lot of that stuff. You're looking at the tolerance stacking and things like that. So,
well, when it comes to whiskey and in firearms, people like to use the word smooth. Ooh, that's
yeah,
smooth.
same thing.
I still have it. I still have, you know, and in like whiskey, it sort of doesn't mean anything anymore. Like, what do you? But we're not. Well, that'll come to another time. When it comes to rifles, in one of my carbines, I still have a JP bolt and bolt carry your EBCG and a silent capture spring system, and it feels very smooth. The operation feels very smooth.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? But there's a difference between performance when it comes to on the field.
There is.
Than it does when I'm sitting in my gun room and I grab the charging handle, I pull back and I go, oh, that sounds really smooth. And then I take a standard AR or standard M4 that's got your twangy spring, no oil in it, and a mil spec generic bolt carrier. And it's like,
yeah,
you know, and that can tell me something about the quality, but that doesn't communicate it one for one.
Well, right, and so that's where that line gets super thin, right? Like, because to have something that sounds super smooth may not go out and be able to perform at a high level, right? Like it gets a little dirt in there and it shuts it down, and so that's where you get into this high-end rifle or pistol, or whatever, is because they have found, okay, we're going to take it to the very minimum tolerance, and now we're going to run it until it fails. Okay, so we run it, it fails at 50 rounds. Well, that's unacceptable. All right, so let's open it up a little bit, right? So let's open up the tolerances. Let's get it to where we can still get the performance out of that we want out of it, whether it's perceived recoil, right? Or if it shoots a lot flatter because we've opened up the gas port, we're allowing more gas through, or we've got a different type of flash hider on there, right? And so we start to open up these tolerances just a tiny bit until we know, okay, it runs 100% right now clean, right? I mean, just building up its regular dirt just from being ran. All right, so now let's take it out into the field and run it. Will it still perform? Okay, so we get out in the field, it doesn't perform. All right, well, let's spend a little bit more time to get it to perform the way we want it to and out in the field. And now you have that rifle that a lot of people are like, well, you don't need that out in the field because I can do it with this rifle. Okay, so you're good. But we're talking about how it feels in the perceived recoil, and for me to be able to transition from target to target and keep my rifle flat and keep my groups a lot tighter. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for. Now, some of that's going to come down to the barrel as well. And barrels, there's very few barrel manufacturers in the country. And a lot of people don't understand is that, like, barrel A, that, you know, let's say company A runs this barrel. Well, that barrel may have been at company A and they ran it through their quality control and it didn't meet their standards. They kicked it back to the barrel manufacturer. That barrel manufacturer sent it to another place until it's worked its way all the way down the line, being like, yeah, this barrel didn't meet this company specs, this company specs, this company specs. So we're going to kick it all the way down the line and we're going to say, all right, well, we're going to sell it for $50. Well, somebody's like, well, my barrel is just as good as your barrel and they're made from the same manufacturer. Well, they are made from the same manufacturer, but the tooling or the way the metallurgy was done on that or something didn't meet the specs of everybody over here in this group. So as it got kicked down the line, it ended up coming over here. So you're going to see a difference in quality there as well within the barrel, just on accuracy.
So I'm going to throw out a name, but it is not meant to be a reflection of the company. But just because you have a Criterion barrel doesn't mean that you're meeting the same, you know, the same, like it's not just because I have a Criterion barrel does not mean that my barrel is performing at the same standard or same level yours is because you received the barrel from the company. I'm using Criterion just generically. I know they tend to make really good barrels, but like, You know what I mean? So like we both have our barrels are both made by the same company, but they're not equal because your company receives it, you do your inspection, and if it passes your requirements, then you keep it, and if it doesn't, you send it back, and then they might say, okay,
and
that
that's
makes
how
sense.
some companies work. Some companies don't do that, but like Criterion does have,
Fair.
they do have um, like different tiers of barrels that they sell, and there's a reason
Hmm.
why their barrels are at different tiers, and it has something to do with their quality control and what they find acceptable. Right? I'm not going to say I've got this barrel, it won't perform. You know, there's something wrong with this barrel, and it will not perform like this $600 barrel. So am I still going to sell it at $600? Well, then if they do that, now they've got customer control, you know, customer complaints, customer service issues. So cut the price on it and sell it with the same name.
Well, this culture, firearms culture, gun culture exists within both dignity and honor culture, and the part of honor culture that comes to play here is reputation.
Mm-hmm.
Reputation is there. This is one of the reasons why stolen valor doesn't go very far, is because once that's found out, you're done. There is very, very little chance of recovery. And that's why, and sometimes there are witch hunts, maybe, but point being said, stolen valor is a good way to, you're done. Once you found out, you're
Yep.
over. Like a very large swath of the culture will literally never touch
Mm-hmm.
you again. So, a company lying about their product is not exactly the same thing as stolen valor, but there still is, or maybe not even lying about it, but pushing the limits of their control to, you know what I'm saying? You know where I'm going with this? Pushing the limits of their control, where you have a standard and you let a couple of them through. It's really hard to recover from that. It's really hard to recover from. This is where I think the drama games get so dangerous, playing into one side of the drama, because it never ends well for both parties anyway. Mm-hmm. And so if you hit your stake to one example of a public fight that you may not have skin in that game, then when it ends, everyone remembers that you were a part of it, whether it turned out well or not.
Yeah,
so
especially now that, I mean, with that social, well, the way social is these days, you got to pay attention to that. But
it's just, don't build your identity on it, I guess. So I want to go back to tolerances, though, because we're talking about guns here, and instead of talking about what is the best barrel length, I want to talk about the things that we think about, that you think about when you're evaluating or you're deciding what it is that makes a thing good. So instead of, is that a good car, it's what makes a good car. Instead of, is that a good rifle, it's what makes a good rifle. Because I have been in Afghanistan with professionals where a guy literally said, well, I can get 2 cheap rifles for the cost of 1 good rifle. I can shoot them just as good. And the problem wasn't the arrows, it was the Indian.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so, and I know that phrase is eventually going to get me canceled, but but you get the point, right?
Yeah.
I mean, given, there is the metaphor, there is the meme of just as good, and that's kind of scary.
Well,
what is it so we talked about tolerances, and then you went into, I used to think that tolerances were like high tolerances for competition guns, mid tolerance for deployment guns, low tolerance for cheap guns, but that was monkey brain, Forrest.
No, I think you can look at it as, well, let's take a step back. We always have to, I feel like every time I'm talking about this conversation, I have to be very clear. I'm not saying that your rifle will not do what my rifle will do to a certain degree, right? Like they'll both shoot somebody or a target or anything like that if they need to at 25 yards, no problem. There's certain things that when you get to a certain level, just like you do in cars, that you're looking for a different degree of performance out of it. And that's where you start to get that separation. And that's when you start to look into things. But I can tell you right now, anytime I get an AR, or I have a friend that buys an AR, the first thing I do is I do change the bolt out, because that's the most important part to me on an AR is the bolt. I've seen
Bolt or bolt carrier group.
I will go with the bolt. Like if I had to, if anybody called me right now and they're like, "Hey, I've got a rifle. What's the first upgrade I could do?" Replace your bolt. Replace your bolt headspace.
On any company, on any brand.
No. So there's a difference there. So I'm a little biased. Let's throw that out there.
Fair.
But
No, it's fine.
I am a huge fan, and I have seen it happen time and time and time again that a JP bolt by itself has taken a rifle that will not run consistently. I pull the bolt out and I throw a JP bolt in there, and that rifle is back up and running.
When you're saying running consistently, are you saying it's not cycling consistently?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
yeah, like I do like JP's guts when it comes to guns. Like I'm not a big fan of your handguards.
Yeah.
Because I tend to be running a different style of shooting,
right,
which is fine. Right. But like it doesn't mean that I think they're shit.
Yeah.
They're not like trash cans. But it's not like it's if I'm building a rifle, I'm probably not choosing that. But like your bolt, I've been running your bolt carrier system for 5 years now. I think I won one in a competition once, and it never left the gun.
Yeah, no, I've been at
a Warsport LVOA with a JP bolt.
I've been at a match, at multiple matches, and a guy, you see him on the first stage has a malfunction, second stage has a malfunction, third stage has a malfunction, and at third stage, everybody's like, "Oh, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this. Hey, just run my rifle." I carry, like, JP gives me bolts, like. Okay. And I carry bolts around with me at matches, and I would literally give somebody a bolt and be like, "Here, just throw this in there and run it on the next stage." And they get up there
somewhere. I'm not gonna do it, but like, this is my mailing address. I'd like a bolt. Please.
Yeah,
can I has bolts?
and they'll throw the bolt in there. And they go shoot a stage. That thing's up and running, and they're like, "What?
Good.
It didn't malfunction." And they're like, "It's that simple?" I'm like, "Sometimes it is, right? Sometimes you're looking at issues." So that's the first place I always start. And it happens every year. This year I was down in New Mexico shooting a match, shooting a long range match. This guy was shooting in the gas gun division. His rifle would not run. He was manually cycling it. At the end of day one, somebody's like, "Go talk to Dustin. He might be able to help you out." He came over to me. I pulled a bolt out of my bag, gave it to him, put it in there, and he went on to whoop me in this competition and was able to take first after that because his rifle just ran the entire time. After that, he called JP and ordered like 5 bolts and changed out all the bolts on his ARs to the JP bolt. So that is like that one thing. If you were to talk to me about something that's going to run and it's a cheap upgrade or something I have to have in my rifle, no matter what rifle it is, I'm running JP bolts.
So when JP sends the bolts out to you, they send the good ones, but then they sell the mediocre ones. Yeah. I know. I am onto you.
You're onto us.
I am onto the JP conspiracy. We know that it's all a gimmick. It's all a gimmick all the way down.
Marketing, man. Marketing.
Yeah. So yeah, I have here a gimmick. What is that gimmick built on? Another gimmick. It's gimmicks all the way down. It's turtles all the way down.
Yep.
Still thought, but yep. Okay, cool. So you regret being a good person. I understand this.
Yeah. People are like, he beat me because of that. And I was like, yeah. I mean, clearly he was going to beat me if he had a rifle running. So it's only fair.
Yeah. Well, the last time I shot the JK Memorial, you beat me. So we had to do the shoot off, and
I remember that.
That was what, 2016.
Yeah, was it that long ago?
16. Yeah, dude, I'm old. Yeah, I have gray hair. You just don't have hair, so you can't tell.
Yeah, that's because I shaved it on Thursday just for our podcast on Friday. Since we had technical difficulty, But it was getting long, man. Hey, you can see all the bald spots coming in and everything.
Yeah, well, maybe it's just your massive brain.
My wife.
I need more. I need more intelligence. Push all these hair follicles.
Yeah,
out.
Right.
Yeah. So the New Mexico shoot was a long distance.
Thing?
Like, Here's the next one, because this is where I'd love your input on this one. When I was learning to shoot competition, I had the advantage of being in the Minnesota area, which had Minnesota's got a really good competition scene. which was surprising to me because I was thinking like, oh, Northern Midwest, it's going to be like no guns, no competition, it's no one's going to do anything, and I was completely wrong. So it's got a pretty sizable competition scene, and getting involved in a major match, I had no idea what I was doing. And sometimes you just got to do it. You just got to dive in and figure it out, right? And so for a person who's getting started in shooting competition, who wants to shoot competition, who has never been to a match before, what do you recommend they do?
They've never been to a match before. Show up. Don't go buy everything. Show up with some ammo. The biggest deal is like if you've never been to a match, find a range close by. Get a hold of the range. They'll tell you like, hey, there's this club, there's this club. If they don't have any clubs there, most of the time they'll say, hey, go to this website. There's this website that'll tell you all the local matches. From there, reach out to them, talk to them, just see what you need, like the bare minimum you need to have. Well, sometimes if you don't have anything that's actually like okay to come and compete with, right? They'll tell you like, hey, buy this amount of ammo. Make sure it's this type of ammo because they'll use steel targets, so you can't show up with, steel core rifle ammo because you'll ruin the targets. But you can show up, and a lot of times the guys will have 2 or 3 extra rifles, shotguns, pistols, whatever it is, sitting in their car with belts and holsters and like everything you need. So you just show up, eye pro, hearing protection, some ammo. They'll put you with somebody that's got everything that you can borrow, and you can shoot the entire match and just have a good time and not be stressed out about, oh, I should have did this or should have done that. So first thing, find a range, reach out to them, find out who you need to talk to get out to be there, and then just show up and have a good time. Don't worry about the stress. Nobody there is, they're not going to be rude. There's not going to be like, oh, you don't belong here because you don't have this, or look down at you. They are the most opening community I've ever had the honor of being part of, right? They just open their arms and come on in.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. I actually made the mistake because I decided I was going to shoot competition when I wasn't even in the United States. And so I came home and I bought a bunch of stuff, and then I started shooting competition. And I completely went through that. I was like, and now I only have one piece of equipment from that left. From that initial purchase run, maybe 2.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, and so, it was just, given that 7 years later, and I've done a lot of different things since.
Yeah.
But
I also tell people too, for competition, be practical, because you can show up and we're running, a lot of us are running 2011s and we're running JPs and we're running Benellis. You don't need to do that, right? You won't even be able to outshoot the original pistol that you have for probably your entire life, right? So don't go and like come shoot a match and be like, oh, these guys are running a 2011. I need to go spend $3,000 to $5,000 compete with them because my Glock won't do it. In all reality, guys, a lot of people will never outshoot the setup that they have, right? So until you decide like, I'm going to commit my life to being a competitive shooter, and know that I'm about to go down this rabbit hole of never making any money, don't go spend the money, right?
Yeah, it's not. If you're gonna go hard in the paint, it can be expensive. It's very expensive. If you're gonna go, but that's with anything. So like, let's not be facetious here.
Well, no, it is.
If you take anything down that road, it gets very expensive. Whether it's fashion, whether it's guns, whether it's cars, whether it's basketball, I don't care. So like, I get that, right? The new advice, the advice for the new shooter, new guy who wants to get involved in competition shooting, because it has its benefits. Like I got out of the military and then I learned how to shoot handgun, and I learned how to shoot handgun shooting competition. It's really how it works. If I had never shot competition, I would be a garbage handgun and shooting. I'd be pretty mediocre when it comes to handguns right now.
Yeah.
So now you got somebody who's been competing for a while. They've been competing for a while on a local level and they want to push national. How would you recommend they look at national, like major matches? What is a major match first?
So a major match is going to be a 2 to 3 day match where you're going to shoot anywhere from 12 to maybe 20 stages in those 3 days, depending on what style match you're doing. You're going to find that depending on your area, like if you're in Minnesota, if you go to a major match, unless it's in Minnesota, you're going to find you're going to have a lot farther shots, right? But you're going to see like just target presentation in general is going to be harder. And there's going to be 150 to 250 competitors there. And then your round counts a lot, it's higher. So you go to a major match, you're taking half a case of ammo with you per gun, plus slug, maybe some buckshot if you're looking at 3 gun. And it's going to be high impact in your face. So you may have a stage that's 10 seconds long, and it's a dead sprint through the entire stage. And then your very next stage could be a stage that's 2 minutes long. And it's very methodical, very, almost a choreographed dance where in order to be competitive, you have to walk that stage about 15 times and understand at every position that if your foot is 6 inches too far to the left or too far to the right, you may go past a complete target. So mentally, that's what you need to start expecting there. Financially, you're going to pay money to travel there, whether you're flying or driving, hotel rooms, food, your expenses to even shoot the match, your match fees. And then, other than that, if you've been shooting and you've been shooting for a while, you already know what organizations are out there that are holding the major matches, or, the people that are running them. You have a good idea of who they are. No?
I wouldn't guarantee that. No, I wouldn't. No, my first major match, I did not know. I was like, it was the first one that fit within my calendar.
Okay.
I went to I did not know who was putting it
really?
on. And
okay.
Yep. And to avoid getting into gossip, they're no longer around for a reason.
Well,
and I remember driving there, listening to Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, getting to the match, having a horrible experience, leaving the match, listening to Jocko Willink say, "You horrible human being, you need to take responsibility for your life." And I'm sitting here, I just spent a bunch of money to go have a really bad experience in a state far away, and it did not turn out well. And so
nowadays,
so I would not make the assumption that
right.
because a lot of us, we don't, the reason why is I didn't know what questions to ask, even though I could have come to you 5 years ago. I didn't know what questions to ask.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah. Well, so
how would
I would say whoever's running your local scene, they shoot major matches.
Most likely.
So
yeah.
I would say talk to them. They're going to start telling you, hey, there's this match that's good. There's this match that's, ran well. Or they may be like, well, I don't shoot majors anymore, but that group of guys likes to shoot some majors. Go talk to them. They'll help you out. They may even let you carpool with them because you're now helping cut down their expenses to get to the match. But it's communication. New to beginning to an expert, or, been shooting forever, whatever it is. It's always going to be about communication and just being open and telling people like, hey, I would like to go shoot my first major. I don't know what to expect. Is this a good match or anything like that? They're going to lead you down the right path for the most part. You may get some bad information here and there. We've all had a match. If you've been shooting and you've shot major matches, you've had a match that you went to where you're like, well, that was a waste. That was never going back to that match. I'm not going to shoot there again. Whether it was ran poor or whatever it was, it just didn't work out for you.
Yeah, no, I definitely had that experience, but and the point with that came from is that I didn't ask people.
Yeah.
I certainly did have people available to have this conversation with, but I was too intimidated by their skill level to feel like I should ask or whatever, right? Or it's just like I took things for granted. And like so that the purpose of it too is that of this podcast having a lot to do with like culture building, I think a lot of it is being able to swallow whatever it is that's telling you not to ask that question and just go talk to your buddy.
Yeah.
Go talk to somebody about
and
it.
if you're listening to this podcast and you're wanting to shoot a major match or even a local match, just get a hold of me. I know everybody in the industry in all the shooting disciplines that I can at least point you in the right direction to get you the right information. There's no need to not ask, especially now. It's expensive to go shoot a major match. There's a lot of money, a lot of time goes into it, and you should always enjoy what you're doing, whether it's a local or a major match.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, if there's absolutely, like, you have to enjoy it, and if you're not. Yeah, so that's cool. Thank you for providing that opportunity for people, especially because, like, as I've survived over the years, I think most of us are so much more approachable than we think, or we are so much more. Most of this culture is actually very approachable. I think I can count on one hand the number of times where I've went to somebody for advice or a question and then they've blown me off. And at the end of the day, I know who all those people are right now, and I wouldn't want to be them.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be them at all, right? I know who they are. I know where they've been, and I wouldn't want to be them. I wouldn't want to be them because it's like, wow, you have the spotlight and you're a miserable human being. So
and it's out there. I was just saying that they're out there, and I have a couple of people where I feel the exact same way you do. Like, just don't want to be them.
I wouldn't want, yeah, and there's a certain flip side you got to be careful of too, right? Because I've noticed that, I've noticed that when it comes to people, you have to recognize that they're also like, each one of us has a limited amount of time. Each one of us has a limited amount of time and effort and energy that we can put out. And for me, right now, I'm going through some stuff with TBI and trying to figure out, like, if I've got some head issues. And one of the things, the reason why it's been coming up is I've noticed that let's just say my gas can for brain juice is limited. And I've started hitting the edge of that, where it's like, you'll ask me a basic question and I'll have hit that point, and it's like, I need like an hour. I need to go take a nap or something. Give me like 5 minutes. Otherwise I can't get to you or I can't answer that question fully. And so, I've noticed that. And so when you're talking about, when I'm even looking up to people, I'm looking up at this guy's ability, right? Like, let's just take Josh Froelich. Josh Froelich is a good example. Like, he's somebody who's easy to look up to because he's very accomplished in competition shooting. And if I ask him a question and he doesn't get back to me, if I ask him a question and he doesn't get back to me, I don't see that as him like ignoring me, because he's a busy person. He's got a lot going on. But when he does reach out and say, hey, this is the answer to your question, it's valuable, because it's like, okay, I understand the amount of time it took. You had to receive the question and think about the answer. Involves some integrity in it. You're not hiring some intern to answer your stupid questions. So I think there's a humility that goes both ways.
Yes, for sure. I always tell people, especially with me, I have people, I'll be at a trade show or a match or something. I'll give somebody my cell phone number and I'll be honest with them. Like, look, if you text me and I don't get back to you within a week, it's not personal. It's not like I'm trying to blow you off or anything like that. Some days my schedule is so busy that you text me, and though I make a note that I'm going to get back to you, that just my schedule went off roller coaster. And by the time I slowed down, I've already forgotten that. So if you don't hear from me in a week, just text me again. And I will, at that point, stop doing what I'm doing to make sure, like, I get back to you, because it's life and we're all busy, and I don't want anybody to think I'm ignoring them. So I try to put that out there right away. Like, give me some days to get my schedule under control and get back to you. It's not personal.
Yeah, I've definitely had that attitude adjustment in the past, where it was, oh, he didn't answer me, he doesn't like me. And you're like, oh, come on, dude, like, get over yourself. And so eventually it's like, I've had to change. I've had that attitude adjustment, going from, oh, he didn't answer me, does he think I'm a bad person? Does he not like me? Does he think I'm stupid? And to, like, he didn't get back to me. Okay, I'll text him tomorrow. See what he's going on, right? Like follow up, because like, dude, we're all working, we're all doing stuff, so it's cool.
And it comes with a little bit of maturity too, right? Like you're so amped up, you got a question, you're excited about it, you ask somebody, but remember there is that whole patience that goes into it. That leads me to a story. So I'm not going to say the organization or anything, but there was an organization. They were doing some stuff, and they were like, "Hey, they brought in this kid to shoot video for them." And he did the video for super cheap, and they liked it, and they were like, "Hey, yeah, like we're looking at possibly bringing you in for this event now. We'll have more details for you later." Well, this kid got super excited and started texting them like every hour that day, wanting details. And they're like, "Hey, like give us a couple of days. You know, we got some stuff going on over the next 4 days. We'll get back to you next week." And he texted them every day. And then they were like, "All right, yeah, we don't care how good of work you do. We don't want to deal with that either." Right. So there's this whole happy balance of like, you know, be patient, but do follow up, but also, you know, still be patient.
Yeah. And I think there's something to be said is that this is a long tail industry. It really is. Like you people who have good reputations because they've had a good reputation over time. And so as very easy as it is to destroy a good reputation, also the long tail of it is that they've been able to, the good reputation is not in risk avoidance. I think that's probably the way I'd say it. Is that like, you know, if you come across as a person who never wants to do anything because you're always afraid of something happening, then you won't be here very long. Right. And that's fine. This isn't for you, but that's all right. Like there's no moral criticism of it whatsoever.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, you see this a little bit you see an interesting dynamic of this in like special operations too. It's like sometimes you run into somebody who is like, you just don't fit the billet. It's not like I think you're a bad human being. It's just that, hey, you know, it requires someone that can jump 10 feet and you can only jump 8. So like,
yeah,
it doesn't mean you're a bad person unless you think so. Sometimes that happens.
Yeah, for sure.
It's an odd way to say it. I don't want it to be, you know, it's just an odd way to say it. Like, and so in gun culture, it's like, you know, if the long tail really does play a credit to people, because you eventually might be given an opportunity where if you can't perform to that standard, you won't be given that opportunity again. So that's why you dry fire, and that's why you practice, and that's why you pay attention to what you're doing. And it's complicated.
Yep, for sure.
All right, so changing, I think, you know, hard segueing into a new subject. Because we've talked about guns and how you measure performance. We've talked about the correlation between guns and cars. We've talked about shooting competition. So let's go into, media production, because you run a media production company.
Kinda, yeah.
Which there's a little bit of like, I can't tell you how many pages and things that I've seen where somebody is a competition shooter and a photographer, or they're a blank and a photographer, or you know what I mean? Like, you know, you got like, what is it? Like, you know, pistols and pixels and bullets and bytes and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like all these kind of things, right? All these different names and video. There is a segue between, there is a correlation between shooting a gun and shooting a camera, because they have, like the car thing, tiers of equipment. You got to be able to know how to use the equipment, but you also sometimes need the equipment in a certain way. How'd you get into media production?
I was building rifles at JP at the time, and JP's media presence was horrible. And myself and a guy by name James Leffler, we got permission to have our own Instagrams and be able to post stuff out of JP. So we both started kind of playing around with it, and we were having fun. And they started to notice that JP's social media account was actually growing from that. So
are we talking about Leffler like Iron
Yeah,
Man painted
yeah,
guns,
yeah.
Leffler? Is he still around? How's he
Dude, he's still
doing?
fantastic. He's now he's in
Good.
Texas working for Infinity.
Oh, good
Yeah,
for him.
yeah,
So he made okay, good for him. Like it's interesting to see where everybody
yeah,
went.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I kind of feel like I kind of feel like I was the extra on a cast of like characters because now you got Leffler down there, you got Amax, you got you, and I'm just like I was there for a little bit. I know the people. I'm the red shirt of the Minnesota shooting tribe. Like oh yeah, we all know him, but like he's out there now.
nah, we don't look at you like that at all, man.
I
Uh,
do.
okay, well, we can't fix how
It's
you look at
it's
yourself, but just so you know,
it's a
we don't look at you that way. But
it's a joke, man. We're
yeah,
good.
no, and the marketing director was Jesse Gangle, who's John Paul's oldest son, came up and just asked me if I wanted to start doing a little bit more in the media side of things. And I said sure. So I kind of went over there and was helping out, and they fired the video guy and they hired another video guy. And I was supposed to be working with this video guy. Now, I've never shot video, never edited, never been in front of a camera or anything like that. And this new video guy they hired dropped the ball on some stuff. And, we go into this meeting and they're like, well, what happened? He's like, well, Dustin did this. And I'm like, we're a team. And so I was just like, yeah, we both failed. It won't happen again. And we came out of that meeting and they fired him. And they're like, he's not a team player. He threw you under the bus. He didn't care about accepting any of the responsibility. So we're going to let him go. Can you handle all of this? And I'm like,
Damn.
man, I've never shot video. I've never done any of this stuff. So I'm like, I'll figure it out. So I call my best friend, who is Sean Nelson, and he just started getting into cameras about a year before that. And we had actually started up Action Gunner a year before that. And at that time, it was just going to be Sean running video. And, Nathan Payne was involved and Jake Latola. So it was just Sean like running video. That was kind of that. So I call him up. I'm like, look, this is what's going on. And Sean, without hesitation, was like, I got you. What do you need? And I said, well, can you come in and shoot some content for JP? And then I'm going to start learning how to edit. And it took me 1 month to edit my first 3-minute long video that got posted for JP. Dude, and I'm talking about not like 3 months of work, like just the work hours. I'm talking about like staying up till 4 in the morning and being at work at 7 in the morning, trying to figure out how to run Premiere Pro, right?
Yep.
And then,
Except I used DaVinci, but okay.
Yeah, but it just started there. And then Sean was like, hey, try this, try that. And then I was like, well, I need to get a camera. So you're not always having to come into JP to do stuff. And JP had a camera. So I was messing around with JP's camera. I bought a camera. And then, next thing you know, it's, fast forward a couple of years later and Sean and I are traveling around with JP or for JP. We're going to major matches and we're shooting interviews at the major matches. We're following people down the trail, during the stages and stuff, shooting content. We're putting it back out there for JP's for their YouTube channel. And it just kept growing and growing and growing to where in 2020 during COVID, I had enough contracts out there that I could leave JP if I wanted to and just be an independent contractor. So I put in my resignation letter, gave them a 1 month notice. And the first place I came to actually was Real Avid because I was sponsored by them. And they hired me on the spot to do video content. Like they're like, we don't want you to be a contractor. We want to just hire you full time. And they're like, we'll still let you go shoot all the matches. And what that actually allowed me to do was that the finances I was able to get from Real Avid was able to buy more and better equipment. And Sean's consistently been upgrading his equipment to now where, we're shooting content for people. I just shot my first wedding this weekend. So it was just a long transition of everything just kind of laid out perfect. And I was willing to put in the time and effort and sacrifice some hours of training and being at the range and sacrifice hours of being with my family to learn.
Yeah, no, there's time invested. That's a good story, man. And that because I think I'm looking forward to what is coming in this culture, in this industry. Oh, that sounds really weird. Please clip that and make it sound horrible. But there's a fly on my wall. So the point being said is the video content and the way that gun culture has had to navigate media is certainly not a light topic.
It is not.
To breach into, because you've got to deal with things like censorship and the possibility of censorship. You have to deal with different standards. Mm-hmm. You can't advertise on Google. You can't advertise on this, that, the other, or you can, but you can't. You got to do it this way, but you can't. And so it's really weird. Yeah. And then there's also, you know, the underlying element of the gun world, which is always the kind of I would say the identity crisis side of it, which is we can get into that later. But that is the identity crisis, is that gun culture, like at every minute you're involved in gun culture, you have to be able to answer the question, what for? Yeah. And it's not always easy, but that doesn't mean you just go, well, I don't have an answer, so I quit. And that's kind of a credit to the people here. Well, that's a nice. So you started in media through JP, mm-hmm. and you just explored your way through. You didn't go to school for, you know, video production.
No, what I did mm-hmm. was I would just. I'm one of those, like, if I do something, the next time I do it, I want it to be better. And I just kept going down that road and spending hours. Like, I'll spend hours editing a video when I know that the finished product that I already have is good, but it's not the best I could do. I know I can do it better, and I'll spend hours just messing around with that, and then send it out to whoever needs it. So it's all been self-taught. I'll watch some videos here and there. I'll look at some stuff, and then I've been open to exploring new stuff. So I shot my first wedding this past weekend. I shot my first rap video for a record label like 2 months ago, and they're like, all right, so they're bringing me in for another one. Nice. Yeah, I'm shooting that one next month in South St. Paul. And it's just fun, man. It's just having a good time, learning what I can, following other people, and watching like, mm-hmm. hey, I love how they did that. I don't like how they did that. You know, and then kind of going from there. And you know, but the gun culture part of it, and being able to really be creative and show the videos that you really want to show in the gun industry is something that we're trying to change at Action Gunner. Like, a lot of these videos of a stage run and things like that, they're the same. And it's like, how can we change that? How can we make these entertaining, more of a documentary style feel with some entertainment, right? And so that's really what we've been trying to do. And
okay, what's a value add? Like, what is a way that, because I think of, we approach content in the firearms industry in one of two ways. It's either entertainment or it's education.
Yep.
Right.
So we're looking at just the pure entertainment side of things, right? So when you look at a major match, they've got all these sponsors. The sponsors need content out of it. What is the match going to do in return to get them what they need? And it's about views, and it's about reels right now, right? So Sean changed and when I say change the game, I don't mean that in like just like a relative term. I mean, he's got people now who have changed their entire video in net, like marketing ways, to replicate what Sean Nelson did. So we had the contract for the tactical games, and I had shot some video that was long form content, and then I couldn't go to a couple of matches. Sean goes to the matches. He shoots a video, and he comes back, and he's editing, and he was like, all right, well, I got to put out these like longer form content videos. I don't like them. They're boring. I'm tired of doing those. And he literally just laid out the sequence settings to shoot his 4K footage as an Instagram reel. And he just typed in the settings for Instagram reels into his sequence setting. And then he would have to move, you know, depending on where the subject was at in the video, he would have to move the position of the video around to fit them in there because it took up, you know, the whole screen. And then all of a sudden he starts dropping these videos, and it's like right on top of the shooter. He's got the night, you know, and he, of course, he uses an overlay for the coloring, but it's right on top of the competitor, whether they were doing their CrossFit stuff at the tactical games or they were shooting. It was just a completely different look of like actually being in like right next to somebody as they're doing it, almost like a POV style stuff. Like you're following that guy shooting, and it changed everything. I mean, that's all companies want now. You know, we're talking about big companies in the industry are calling their sponsors saying, hey, we want this type of stuff. We'll pay big money for this type of video to come out. And now instead of having like a 5 minute long format, you know, long form video that gets boring, we're able to drop 30-second, 45-second videos that are like a highlight reel, and you can drop 20 of those of the same competition, but nobody can tell that's the same competition because it's all, you know, the way it's formatted and shot, it's completely different.
Yeah, I know I know as we were exploring, and I say we as in like, I remember shooting competition, and it was always, hey, can you shoot this? Can you film this for me? You hand your phone to somebody and they film it. Yeah, I remember that. And then, you know, we started thinking about like, oh, it would be like if we put a drone in there and we did this, that, and the other. And like, then I stopped shooting competition.
Yeah.
So so it's interesting to see how is that. Do you think? I mean, it's a bit of a trend to have the close up follow, like the very maybe even claustrophobic feel up close. But then also, I think it's. We'll see how it goes because I know what you're talking about. Like I've seen some other people do it too.
Well, so there's
with their content, they shoot a very like personal approach to things and detailed, but not. I guess the way I'm saying is not everything is 3 doors down and it's a guy wearing ACUs yelling and kicking a door and saying "oorah" at the end because that's the Marines and not the Army.
Right.
You know what I mean? You know.
So he has done other stuff where he's backed it out, and you can see like. You know, especially at tactical games, you could have 5 guys out there on the same line. 3 guys are throwing equipment around, other guys are shooting. And he's been able to replicate where you can see all of that and then turn around and replicate it at AK matches, at PCC, you know, USPSA, and then even 3-gun. So it's been interesting to watch. It definitely is a trend. We'll see that trend's going to change. But right now, it has been probably the most high intensity type video that you could get that would actually make a 3-gun stage or a USPSA stage look where you're like, oh, that's cool. I enjoyed that. Like that stage looked fun. I enjoyed watching that video.
I'm not using the word trend as a criticism.
No, I got you.
Change.
Yeah.
You know, that's neat. All right. Well, that's all going through Action Gunner because like. If I want to see intense, well-produced competition footage, whether I'm looking for inspiration for something I want to do or something I want to produce, Action Gunner. Gotcha. Yep. Yeah, I've seen some of your stuff over time. I'm not on your page every day. Sorry.
I'm not on that page every day. I'll let Sean do that. I just hang out.
Right. Yeah. So how do you think media has influenced the type of competitions that we start seeing? And how do you think the media that is produced by gun culture has influenced gun culture as a whole?
Well, I mean, you look at 2-gun. 2-gun's starting to make this big comeback, and AK matches are starting to make this big comeback because you have people like Lucas Boykin out there who's setting up these different shootings, you know, scenarios at his range, and he's shooting them, and he's making it where people are like, well, I want to do that with my AR or my AK. I want to do that with my pistol. I want to wear a plate carrier. And so you're starting to see these guys that were just hanging out in their basement, playing around with their guns, maybe go out to the field and shoot. So now they're like, well, Lucas went and shot this match, or Joe Farewell is doing this. I want to do that. I want to go out there. I want to go do some of the stuff that they're doing. And now they're starting to show up to these local matches, and they're showing up, and they don't care to change their gear. They don't care to compete at a high level. They care about running their gear, making sure it runs, making sure it will do the job that it needs. And that's the biggest change right now that I am seeing within gun culture is with media.
Interesting, because I knew people who were like that in 2016, who they would show up in some of their more tactical, what do you want to call tactical gear, and they would shoot a stage, but they would shoot a 3-gun stage. They just wouldn't bring a shotgun because they had no desire to learn the shotgun, and they weren't interested in their score. They weren't interested in how well they beat other people. They were only interested in having a situation, having a stage that they can shoot with the gear that they own, and see how their body mechanics move and all this other kind of stuff.
Yep.
So you're saying, and one of the reasons why I think I do think the barrier to entry to 3-gun is the shotgun. I'm not very movable on this one. I think if you could get rid of the shotgun, you'd have a lot more people competing, because it's not fun unless you put the time into it. Then it becomes.
So it's funny you bring that up. I love shotgun. Absolutely love shotgun. I refuse to shoot a shotgun match or shoot a 3-gun match right now because I don't want to go shoot a shotgun. And I love shotgun, and I can load a shotgun. I can quad load a shotgun. I can be competitive with it. I just have zero desire to run around and play with a shotgun right now. So I agree. The barrier to 3-gun is that. Now, yeah, you're right. Like in 2016, 2017, there's always been that group of guys that showed up, and that's what they cared about, and that was it. But now you're seeing where Sean and I are consistently running a 2-gun style match only, and we're having 50 to 60 people show up for that you've never seen them in a 3-gun match.
Exactly.
You've never seen them in a USPSA match. And all of them show up, and they're all wearing, like, you'll see their gear matches this new media, Instagram, like gun culture type thing that's coming out. And it's fun. Like I love watching.
They probably have a Faro Concepts, a GBRS belt, an Axle AXL. They've probably got something like that. Yep, they're running a slight, not a drop leg holster, but just a little receding one with a strap. Yep. Yeah, no, I definitely know the trend.
I love it.
Like I remember the tactical industry before wearing a belt was a thing. Like I remember when literally everything except for your handgun was on your plate carrier.
Yeah.
And so now, and now it's kind of stretched out a little bit. And so that is an intriguing element because I stepped out of competition in maybe 17-ish. I was heavy in school. And so I stepped out of competition in maybe 17-ish. And then when I moved and I started looking at what were the local matches, the first one I found was a 2-gun match. And I was like, I thought it was regional. And now I know it's not.
No, it's taken hold, and it's been awesome to watch. And then you also see that carry optics, right? Your everyday carry with a red dot on top has blown up, and it's getting bigger. And it's fun to watch these guys show up and have some, their Glock 19 that's all stippled out, and it's got a red dot on it, and they're running a compensator, and they're just having a good time. And what I enjoy about it is these guys they'll shoot a stage. And I've had guys like, I thought I could shoot better than that. I'm like, you probably can when you're not under stress, right? Like,
yeah, you're not.
Yeah. So
I'm trying not to do, I don't want to do like the woke snaps because it's just, every time people do that, like, oh, I agree with you. I just look at that and disdain. That's just all it is. It's like, when I'm sitting here going, my heartbeat, like boom, 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 boom. Yep, I know what that means. Just this. If you do this as like support of somebody, like I don't know. I don't like you.
You don't have to worry about that with me.
I'm not saying I don't like you. It's just like it's kind of like one of those things. You want that to be trendy and cool, but it's not. You know, it's like it's just like yeah. So whatever. So you're seeing people show up. And they're like, oh, wow, I thought I could shoot better because now they're under the pressure of the timer and they're under the pressure of other people's eyes and they're under okay, cool. Yeah.
And then, and it's fun. It's fun to show up and it's like that you're not dealing with, you're losing base purely like you and person A and person B have the same skill set. But person B has the financials to buy a 2011 and to run, the best AR out there, and then this guy's got a Glock and all that. It's fun to show up to these two-gun matches, and you've got guys out there that are like, we're all shooting around the same gear. We're all running like Glocks and SIGs, and we've got these red dots on our ARs, and there's no division difference between any of them. And it's been a lot of fun to watch them grow. And I found that it was really hard for me to relate with them, which I've already been having an issue relating. When I would go teach a firearm class, I'm having an issue relating with people anyways, because I was carrying for the longest time. I was carrying an Atlas 2011. That was my everyday carry. And I was having an issue, like they pull out their Glock and I'm pulling out a $5,500 pistol. And I'm like, okay, you can't relate with me. Got it. So I for myself, even relating with them, I actually went to a Lone Wolf, which is a Glock 19 style pistol with a red dot. And I'm like, dude, this is great. Like, I never would have thought in my life I would have went from an Atlas to be like, I shoot my Glock more than I shoot my Atlas at this moment.
Yeah, I had a 2011 and I sold it.
Well, not
for night vision.
Well,
and I sold it, and now I'm shooting like a SIG P320. I've got a Glock 19 and a SIG, and like I'll go back and forth between the two.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because it's just I don't know. Like I haven't been shooting competition as much. Do you think? Okay, so here's my impression. Single stack is sort of like shooting a revolver.
It's close. I would say revolver's more fun at this point.
Well, single stack. When I think of single stack, I think okay, old timer, and then I don't mean to be derogatory, but it's kind of like okay.
In the modern day firearms, a single stack is like a revolver. Is how I look at it.
It's an old, yeah. Well, when you're looking at competition divisions, they're divided based on gear, but gear also the equipment on the gun, but that also has some of those equipment. If you look at all of the progression, you can with the exception of open, which is always your high as balls.
Mm-hmm.
With the exception of open, it seems like there's a progression, right? You've got like single stack and then limited, which is double. You can have a double stack magazine, but only so many rounds. Then you got like this, and you got this, and you got. Now we have because carry optics was invented while I was shooting competition, and now apparently it's such a dominant thing. I don't even know what it is anymore.
It is the number one growing division still to this day. Like.
Yeah, because everyone's using red dots on your. If you have a handgun, if you're a contemporary, you're using.
They had to create its own major match for it. It used to share. It used to be PCC carry optics. Now it's like PCC and something else, and carry optics is its own division. And there's like 400 people that show up, 450 people that show up to USPSA nationals to shoot carry optics.
Yep. Yeah, no, I would expect to see carry optics be, the new standard. It would essentially be the new limited.
Yeah. I mean, well, you look at, you've got law enforcement that's moving into carry optics. The growth of carry optics optics ready is so far from slowing down.
Okay. Yeah, it's only getting bigger. Mm-hmm. And is that in part because of the equipment being? Do you think that's in part because the equipment is contemporary to modern use?
I think it's
right. Like I just played the new Call of Duty. You put red dots on handguns now.
Yeah.
Right. And
I think that plays with it a little bit, but I think when we really get down to it, right? Like we talked about pure fundamentals of shooting. Putting a red dot on a target versus lining up your iron sights is a lot easier.
Yeah. Well, you also don't have to change your plane of vision. You don't have to You know what I mean? You don't have to look at your front sight. It's I look at my target, I put my dot on the target, and I shoot, and I keep both eyes open, and I'm aware. Like biomechanically, it makes sense. There are limitations to red dots, absolutely. Batteries, EMPs, whatever you want to call it, right? I know it. Dust, dirt, technology, sure. Be able to do both, but red dots are.
Yeah, I mean, I
see my target, I put my dot, and pull the trigger.
I've been working. My wife brings in a lot of females for us to work with and train. And, you'll have the ones that show up with irons. They're struggling. And you finally get them where they understand it. It's still a little hard for them to focus all of that, but I can give them a pistol with a red dot and they're off instantly. They are shooting more accurately with the red dot, which now means their confidence goes up, and that allows me to actually take their training to another level instead of just focusing on like they start to get beat down and everything. And so I think a lot more people, including myself, are starting to push optics over like getting iron sights, because it's just like, look, you may not be a person that's going to shoot all the time. So learning how to line up the sights and really work the iron sights. We know that shooting a pistol or shooting anything is a diminishable skill, but you really see it diminish faster with a pistol. With a red dot, when we're looking at somebody's life being on the line and how fast it can acquire that red dot and be confident and just focus on that trigger squeeze, I think red dots is really going to dominate.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I shot a handgun with iron sights. It's been at least a year. At least a year, maybe two. Like all of my pistols have optics. Oh, nope, I've got a revolver. I've got a Schofield. Actually, I think it's right here.
Yeah, see, I'm the opposite. I still have my iron, and I love shooting my iron, but I carry optic. Nice, look at that.
I mean, it's just like a dummy, but whatever. So
yeah,
it is what it is. But no, it's funny to see that with red dots being easier to get into. I think it's like because explaining iron sights is a little tricky to people. It can be like if you grew up with my grandfather, it's not tricky because you're like you get it beaten into you, not physically but mentally. But then when you think about it, it's like, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, you put the front post between the two back posts. It's just so natural. Or if like you've played any first person shooter that allows you to aim down sights, you're like, oh, it makes sense. But then to people who haven't done either of those, it's like, well, I mean, I know how it goes, and then what is your focal plane, and then what is this? How does this all work? And sight focus, and all this kind of all the factors can become a bit overwhelming to a person who's still not comfortable with like how fast you move your finger when you pull the trigger, which I understand
for sure.
So here's kind of one more not last question, but one more thing that you brought it up. So this is your fault. You said your wife brings in people.
Yeah,
you have a human trafficking experience in the fire. You bring people into the dark denizens of the subculture of the gun world, right? I'm sure somebody would make a really long. I'm sure someone could make a headline about how you're the novice to expert pipeline or whatever it is. Yeah. Okay. This is Dustin Sanchez, the gateway drug of shooting.
Yeah.
So how do you like? I remember the trend kind of popping up about like having like a gun friend, your girlfriend, your wife being proficient, and then like it kind of became a trend for a while. It was a little odd. Sometimes and I think it's a difficult subject to navigate in some ways. Because I look at my wife as an example. Like, is she proficient? Yes. Does she enjoy going out and shooting at 2 o'clock in the morning? Not all the time. She'll every once in a while, right? But it's definitely not like this culture is not her identity. Is probably the short answer of it. And we've all met people whose their significant other has made their identity out of something like this, and it becomes a little difficult because you're like. We're talking about a nuanced social thing. How do you and your wife, like engage in practice and shooting and things? Because you had a scenario. I remember you telling me a story from 2020 where you had a very real life experience where you needed somebody other than yourself in the scenario, and yeah. How do you and your wife navigate that?
So, my wife I'd say my wife's probably a little bit more similar to yours, right? Like this isn't her life. This isn't her culture, but she also understands like the firearm industry pays some of our bills, right? I mean, this is what I do. Like not only do my hobby is firearms, but it also pays my bill. I'm in the industry, I'm in the firearm industry, and it pays for things. So she make sure that she puts a little bit more time and effort into it because it is a way of life for me. and we have 4 daughters, so it kind of feeds into all of that. Um, but she grew up in uptown Minneapolis, and she's kind of experienced just different patterns throughout her entire life of, uptown goes through this phase of where it's good, then it's bad, then it's good, then it's bad, type thing. So she's always been aware of like being able to protect herself. So when we started dating, she was already going out and hanging out with some friends and just shooting, shotguns and pistols and all that, to where when we started dating, she was like, "Oh, you compete? I'd love to go watch you." So she goes and watches me. Then she's like, "Well, I want to compete." So then she competed, and she's like, "Three guns not for me." Then she did like 4 years worth of women's leagues. She had fun there, and then she got into long range shooting. Um, and it's just kind of these things where she's just consistently does dry fire and understands just the basic fundamentals of I need to train, I need to shoot my pistol, I need to at least shoot it once a month, whether it's 10 rounds or 100 rounds, I need to shoot it once a month because that is a diminishable skill. I just need to stay on top of that. To where when we went through our incident in 2020, when everything happened, and there were a bunch of people around, but there was only one person that I trusted 100% to have my back and to understand how to use that firearm in a proficient way if needed. And so it's just been just one of these things. She was actually here at Real Avid yesterday and took her Bagara apart and moved it from the stock and dropped it into a chassis because she wants to go compete and have a better setup for that. So she just kind of loves it, enjoys it, and puts time and effort into it, mainly because of me, but she does know the benefits, especially since 2020.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's a subject that I think we can approach with not with like, not like we're walking on glass, but it seems like, one of the things that gun culture kind of, if you want to use the word cringe, but struggles with a little bit is it just goes a little too hard in the paint every once in a while. And you're like, okay, you're a guy's into something. And I have a really good friend who's actually been an extremely good example of this, where he is, he's in the gun culture. He's been a part of it for a while. But, and he gets married and his wife learns how to shoot, and then she learns how, eventually they have some, she buys some, they acquire some gear and whatever, but it's not like, and it's really neat in the sense that like, it's something that they do, but they do it together and they do it pretty privately. It's not like they've made it their identity. And the reason why I'm using that phrase, made it their identity, because I know that it's like a little bit of like a meta thing right now. It's funny, but it's also like, it's really frustrating when you're trying to talk to somebody about it and everything is a reference to their like little, family unit, tactical, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, okay, dude, like, can we just like go get breakfast? And then, now she's trying to like out alpha you. And you're like, I'm not here for it, dude. You know what I mean? And so I'm not saying that it's like, no, it's good that I understand it. Like, I'm trying to be a little bit Gandalfian here, which is a word that I just invented, but it's like nice motivation. You'll work through it kind of thing. Yeah. But sometimes it's a little bit like, I want my wife to feel safe. I want my wife to be proficient. I want her to do these things, but if she doesn't want to go shooting, I'm not going to, there's no way I'm going to force her to go to the range. It's just not going to work. Right. Yeah. I can say, hey dear, let's go shooting. Or, hey, can we set up a time? But like, if she doesn't want to go, it's just not going to happen because it just, if we try to force it, it just doesn't work. Yep. And so I think some couples are interested, are curious in that, because I'm listening to your story where it was very organic. She's made all of her own choices by her own volition. Do you think for women involved, especially when their husbands are involved in the gun culture, maybe they're not part of the industry, but they're involved in the gun culture, there are wrongly held beliefs about the culture itself. Because like we think about it, a really good example is like, okay, a woman goes to a gun store and a FUD hands her a pink handgun. Like that whole generation is dead. If you're still doing that, retire. Right. And so there was a little, I'm not going to use the word misogyny because that's not the right word. It's that there was a little bit of this like stigma that was attached to what a very small number of actors in the gun culture produced. And then as a result, we saw a massive reaction, a swing where it's like, I'm a girl, but I can be a Navy SEAL badass too, just like you right now without ever doing any of the work. I also have an agency handgun and I also have arm tattoos. And you're like,
yeah,
I'm not trying to make you into anything. Just be yourself. Shit.
Yeah. And the sad thing is that you have some girls, and there is a very large influencer on social media that is portrayed as guns, right? I've met her, I've hung out with her and her boyfriend, and it's actually the quite opposite. She does not know how to speak firearms. She doesn't know any of the like not the lingo or that you have to know it, but she doesn't walk the walk, right?
It's inauthentic.
It is.
It's just 100%
It's her boyfriend that pushes it, and he pushes it because he looked at it as, and they should just be married by now. They've been together for so long, but he pushes it as, hey, you're hot. We can get a bunch of free gear. If you do X, Y, and Z, I will run the camera and watch you blow up, and I'll just kind of ride your shirt tail off of that. And that's the type of like, I guess kind of what I feel like you're getting at is that we have people that will do that, but then on the flip side, we have girls that look just like her, do everything like her, but they are legit shooters. They literally spend hours at the range training and doing dry fire and everything. And it's like, where do you go with this? And who's driving it? And who should we be paying attention to?
Yeah, I want to make sure, I want to steer this conversation away from just like women in firearms culture, because it's not really the point.
Yeah.
But I get what you're talking about. And what you're dealing with is like inauthentic people. Right. And you see it the same thing you see it in like the veteran bro thing, or you see it in any element of gun culture. You can find somebody who on camera looks good, but is just once you get them off camera, they're not there. Yeah. And the point that I would say is that there is nothing about that is in any way, shape, or form unique to gun culture or women's participation in gun culture. That is a human standard, from politicians to Coke commercials to whatever it is. There are people who present themselves as something they're not.
For sure.
Right? You know, and when actors do it, we're okay with it because we know and they know that it's an act. But when somebody Robert Downing Jr.'s themselves into something, I'm making a Tropic Thunder reference.
Gotcha. Okay.
When you Robert Downing Jr. yourself into something and you're not the thing, like it will catch up with you, and it maybe the masses won't catch on until you've already made your millions, but the people who matter will know. But the point I'm even saying is like that's not the issue I want to talk about. The issue I want to talk about is how did you and your wife kind of navigate the social weirdness of it? Because, you know, like my wife has come to SHOT Show and we've got great and funny stories of like, you know, dudes. I'll tell the story, right? So we're at SHOT Show and it's happened, right? So like, and part of it is a little bit of whatever. And we go to this party thing, and this is a long time ago now, right? This is over 8 years ago. And we go to this party for whatever, and her and I are sitting together at it's at like a barish kind of thing. And so I walk over to go talk to somebody. I think I was going to go talk to the person who was hosting the party. And then I went over and introduced myself, and it's just like he didn't know who I was because nobody knew who I was then, and it's fine. And so I introduced him like, hey, thanks for putting this on. You know, I like what you do. This is whatever. And then as I'm on my way back, I run into somebody who's wearing something that I know it's a reference to. And I'm like, huh, interesting. Nice. Who are you? And so we got into like a short 5-minute conversation. So I've been away from my wife for no more than 5 minutes at this point in time, maybe 2 or 3. And the guy I'm talking to looks over my shoulder and he says, I wonder who she's with. I wonder where her hunk of a boyfriend is off getting drunk at. And I turn around and he's talking about my wife. And I'm like, oh, you mean me? You know, yeah. Right? And it's like, and what it could have been is it could have been a horrible interaction where it's just like, you dumbass, and we all hate each other now. But it's just like, no, dude, it happens, okay? You know, he felt sheepish. I felt, you know, I was like, okay, that's a funny scenario. It's like, oh, it's very storybooky, whatever. But the point being said is that, like, yeah, we're all going to make mistakes. How do we navigate this scenario in like, our relationships with our significant other? Because most of what I see in social media is like basically what gun culture promotes in marriages is lying to your wife about the price of your guns. No. Like it's funny, but you better not do it.
Yeah. No, you know, for us, it's just like, hey, this is my goal. You know, every year in November, I have my goals are already lined out. And I'll go meet with, if I'm going to want to work on contracts for next year, however that's going to look. I have all these meetings in November. But before I ever get to that point, I have conversations with my wife on, hey, how's this going to affect the family? Am I going to have to travel? If I'm traveling, here's the dates I want to travel and everything. And then for her, you know, the biggest thing for her is she's a massage therapist. So she sees, you know, 6 to 7 people a day, depending on the day. And it leads into, hey, what does your husband do? Well, by the time she's been working on them and they ask that question, she's already got a political feel of, hey, I'm not going into this conversation. And we just talk about it, you know, every day. She would come home, we talk about something, we'll talk about dry fire and everything. And it's just become more of those deals where navigating that really depends on the situation and the circumstance, and you've got to be able to read the room and read the person you're actually talking to. And for my wife, she comes from a very liberal background. And we had to learn right off the bat at a very young in our relationship how to start navigating that conversation, because it turned Christmas parties into some really awkward ones a couple of times. And so we learned how to get through that pretty fast.
Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't owning the family member at the Thanksgiving dinner at the Thanksgiving table and their political position isn't always a win.
Yeah, right.
It isn't always like it isn't always a win. Like make sure you set your goals right. Don't lie to yourself about what your goals are, because you don't want to be you don't want like 10 years to go by and then like now they're doing bad things, but it's sometimes the issue is like know what the victory is and then aim at that.
Yeah, for sure.
And at the dinner table, at the Thanksgiving dinner table, it might be family. Or the other answer is like it might be family. But I mean, I think a hard thing for some people to recognize. I think a hard thing, well, not even for some people, a hard thing to come to terms with is, you know, set yourself a limitation of what is acceptable and then stay within that. And sometimes, you know, your family members are people who may cross that line and you have to figure out what to do with that.
For sure.
And it sounds very like, I don't know, it just sounds weird. Like, there are things that I don't discuss with certain people. It's not that I have to keep secrets. It's just
that's just setting your standards in life in general, right? Like, you just gotta like, do I want to have this conversation? Whether it's firearms, cars, what I had for dinner last night. I guess, you know, we set the standards on what that looks like on a day-to-day basis. And then we'll venture out of that when we feel like it's a comfortable crowd and the moment arises and it's a good time to talk about that, you know? So.
Yeah, I think I was thinking of this question that I wanted to ask you is like, how would you recommend somebody introduce their significant other or their wife or girlfriend or whatever into gun culture? And I was going to ask that question. And as I was asking that question, I was kind of realizing that I had a preconceived notion that the wife, the girlfriend would be resilient to it, which I don't know if I think that's true. I think that that's an imposed position that isn't always as accurate as we think.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, I mean, the easy answer is just don't pander.
Yeah.
Like that's the right. I mean, we all hate it. Like, oh, yeah, I hate it. Like as a veteran, it's like I hate being pandered to. Like, you know, someone's like, oh, your life must have been so hard and blah blah. It's like, no, it's a good time.
Yeah, you know, man, it really depends on just situations, and I try to read a room really well before I go into any conversations because, you know. I look at it this way. We've all had some kind of struggle in our life. And though I feel like mine may have been harder than yours or vice versa, the way we all looked at it and handled it at that moment could have been the most traumatic thing in our life. And whether it was worse than yours or not, it was very traumatic to me. And so just be respectful of whatever's going on and just, you know, just talk to them and figure out how that situation is truly going to lead. And you'll get a good feel when you're talking to people. You'll get a good idea whether some of the things you're going to bring up in that conversation are appropriate or not, according to how they're talking to you.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's a bigger world question.
Yeah, it is.
Well, hey, before we go, you know, before we go, if you're going to go talk to your younger self, whether it was in competition, well, we already did competition shooting, but like in media production, and looking and approaching the sort of unique industry. If I run a company, if I'm a person who runs a company in gun culture, you know, or if I'm somebody who is getting involved in gun culture let's just start with the second one. How would you recommend somebody get involved in media production on the gun side? What are things, whether something to avoid or something to do?
I think something to avoid is don't underestimate your capability of what you can do. I've seen way too many people in this industry be told you have to have this and you have to have that to be able to accomplish this. And that is so far from the truth, right? Be a go-getter, work hard, be eager to learn, and reach out and ask questions.
All righty, reach out and ask questions. Don't say no. Cool, or don't let things stop you.
Yeah.
I mean, you really have to push on. Mm-hmm. The one thing that we don't have is we don't have a tribe of people saying you can do it. Yeah. You really have to do it. You really have to. Sometimes you have to push through the darkness yourself.
And when you get through that darkness, you're going to find people that are in your corner. And then now you have your support group, right? They'll be there. They're going to support you and they're going to help you, and they'll sacrifice their time to make sure you succeed. No, I mean,
sometimes it's you just can't see it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just can't see it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like they were there all along, like pushing you on and helping you through, and you just couldn't see it.
Yeah.
Good. Well, Dustin, thank you very much for this conversation. Let's go back to where do people find you? How do they follow you? Where do they bother you so they can get involved in competition shooting?
Yeah. Hit me up at social media. It's 2A_Dustin. Or you can reach out to Real Avid on Instagram. I'm there, of course, running that. You can also go on to YouTube and go to JP Rifles, go to Real Avid, go to Action Gunner social media. I mean, I'm kind of all over the place on those. But really, my social media platform is kind of the easiest way to get a hold of me. Just shoot me a message, 2A_Dustin. Ask me any questions you have. I'll get back to you. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Besides me just throwing my cell phone out there.
No, I'm not going to do that. But if I ask you, and back to what you said earlier, if I reach out and you don't get back to me today, just give it like 2 days and then hit you up again on like a DM, slide in your DMs twice.
Yeah, I like it when people slide into my DMs a couple of times. We're good. Yeah, man, look, I'm busy, man. I'm I'll be one day I'm in Richmond, Virginia, the next day I'm back here, and then 2 days later I'm in, Oklahoma. Whether shooting a match
No,
or
I get
working.
it.
So it's just get a hold of me, reach out to me, give me
Cool.
a couple days, and if you want, just shoot me your cell phone number. I'll shoot you a text when I've got some free time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, Dustin, it was good meeting you a long time ago. I'm still bitter about the time you beat me in a shooting competition. However, I stopped competing, so I can't really complain for that long. I'll get back into it. Let's do that. But thank you for coming on. Thank you for coming on the Redacted Culture Cast and having some of those deeper conversations about kind of the intricacies of this world that we live in. Yeah, and thanks for your advice, man. I really do appreciate it and your insight into like just how competition has changed. So let's talk again. We'll definitely see you soon. I'll probably see you're going to SHOT Show this year.
I'll be there.
Okay,
I'll be working.
Oh no. I think I just got my approval letter. I'll have to check my email after this. So nice. But it's good to talk to you again. We'll talk to you soon. And for everyone else who's still here, you know that you support the channel by heading to redactedllc.com. That's where you will find our merch. We'll have some other things in the works, but that's where you keep the lights on and the camera running. So we will talk to you soon, and thank you very much.